Hi Jace, how you doing today?
Craig, good to be back. Thanks for having me.
Good to see you. The first person to be on three times, so you must be doing something right, mate.
Thanks, mate. I really appreciate it. And metal horns and happy new year to all your followers. And again, I really appreciate you having me back and talking all things Metallica. What better thing
That's
is there to talk about in life than Metallica?
like we were just, like we were just saying before. I just interviewed a rapper from the US, and then it's like out of my comfort zone just a little bit.
Yeah, a bit of a left turn, right turn, what maybe a little bit through the middle.
But now it's safe. It's my happy place.
Yeah, safe place. Yeah, it's my safe place too.
Yeah, so let's start off. Like we'll talk about 40th anniversary next, but I see Jason in newspaper articles talking about you're traveling overseas. What is going on there, mate?
Oh,
Congratulations.
oh, thank you. Well, yeah, well, look, it's actually a good friend of mine that's actually been pestering me around, doing a story around the passion and the commitment and dedication to follow those things that you actually love. So there was an element of that, and also just around just getting back into life again, just
Mm,
putting aside what we've gone through in the last 2 years and unpacking everything we've gone through. And we all have a story, no doubt. We all have a story, but it was just great to sort of get um, bit of an opportunity to sort of express and be acknowledged in that way around my passion towards Metallica and making that commitment and that process of getting back into life again, which is an
mm,
important message, I guess. I
yeah.
feel very humbled and honoured to get that opportunity.
Yeah, and like you're not one to sort of like brag about that all the time. So if you meet someone, you might not even talk about that. So that's
No,
good that
no,
that
not at
some
all, not at
in the
all.
newspaper can sort of show that.
Well, again, it was again. I've been pestered for quite a few years. Oh, look, it's a decent story, and I'm thinking, look, I don't want to sort of put myself in that position where you're right. I do feel a little bit uncomfortable talking about numbers and showing numbers and all these type of elements that a lot of people like to be the competitive aspect of sometimes being in a fan base or
Hmm.
yeah, that type of aspect of looking at that. But it was more about the main reason I did it was just to say, look, it's okay. We've got to learn to live with the situation that
Yeah,
we're in and just to follow through on those things and just to push that part of it more to the forefront of just, well, here's so and so that's just gone overseas and following his passion. It's also the element of just telling a story around that aspect, but also, look, just get out and live life again. It's life is to be lived and just stop being held back by fear. And I felt this was a really good time for that to sort of get out there. So yeah, I went into Sydney publication, which was great. The initial story was just going to be local, but it just sort of went a little bit further than I actually thought it would. So it ended up in the Sydney Daily Telegraph, or Saturday edition. So there was quite a decent bit of a response and feedback around the story itself. Obviously, the Metallica related part, but again, just the element of, look, someone's actually being brave, or if you want to use that word, going back out, following their passion and putting the last couple of years behind us and just steering forward into that aspect of getting back to life. So
yeah.
yeah, again, great little opportunity to do that.
And it is a big part of your life too, mate. So itch at your back, come on, I want to.
Yeah, of course. Well, that the last couple of years has highlighted that and exposes all those things, and we'll talk about it later. But just that emotional element of following your passion and being passionate about something, you've got to really take that opportunity to hang on to those things, and whether it's gardening or whatever it is for you subjectively, but you've just got to follow it and just keep hold of it, and it's a big part of life. So again, it was a good opportunity, and very humbled to be sort of put in that forefront, particularly very publicly. So
Yeah.
yeah, great for myself. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's all talking about your last trip overseas. You were able to get over to San Francisco late last year to watch the 40th anniversary shows. So, was it a hard process to get over to the US at this stage,
Yeah.
being in Australia? And then, tell us about that.
Well, obviously the timeline, as in leading up to the event, was we started off with the show being announced. So in that specific time, I think it was maybe June or July, we actually just went into full lockdown. So we were in a level 5 lockdown. So there was a process there of just in that specific time frame was, well, we're not going to be able to go. So you couldn't get tickets, and the excitement and the buzz because America was just opening up. They just started all their sporting events, etc.
Yeah.
They just started, music just started to kick off. But we were in a totally different phase. So there was that element, and that sort of followed through into getting closer into our vaccination rates, and then basically there was started to be a little bit of a glimmer of hope that we were going to get to a certain threshold to open our international borders, and it was just all timing. So, I mean, you can look at that any way you like, but I just see it as a bit of a divine intervention, if you want to call that there was just a window of opportunity opened up. So, so the process obviously changed as we went into early December with Omicron. So then there was a fear of border closures, and particularly from the American end to the Australian end, and then there's also the procedural aspects of just international travel itself at the moment. So, I mean, it's quite complex, quite complicated. There's PCR testing, which changed from 72 hours prior to your boarding to 24 hours, and then you got to source out specific and legitimate authorized testing sites, and the whole process was a journey. It was a journey, but very well worth it in the end. Very well worth it in the end.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And then you got over there, and I saw photos of you sort of mingling with your fan club, with your fan page. So how cool was it to see all these people that you probably haven't seen for like 2 or 3 years, right?
Yeah, well, it was exactly nearly 2 years to S&M2, which was coincidentally exactly in the same city and in the same arena, etc. So it was 2019. So all that element, I think for me, that's just as important as actually the music itself now, is that connection with people that have the same passion and love for the same thing you do, and that element of being family. You're part of it, the Met family, as we like to christen it. So again, just being reacquainted and reunited with people that I hadn't seen from the 30-year shows or S&M2, or haven't seen for a period of time, and all coming together, and that element of just bonding and just reconnecting was just amazing, and just another layer and another brilliant part of that experience.
Telling some good stories, and then the day comes for the diehard fans. It's always interesting to see like sets, what they're gonna play. Are they gonna have any guests? Are they gonna, what are they gonna do? Because the 30th anniversary was so unique and just so intimate, and the celebrities that they have and the people that come on to play was just amazing. I was like, okay, what are they going to do for 40? So what were your sort of preconceived ideas of the show, and, what were your sort of expectations?
Yeah. Well, I mean, expectation always outweighs reality, doesn't it?
Yeah,
so, I mean, you're right.
True.
I mean, you explained it better than what I could there. There's always going to be the comparative elements around the 30-year shows, and again, your own expectations. But like, I'll be really brutally honest. I actually really didn't have any. I was just being there.
Yeah,
getting because you've got to actually put these shows in the context of a pandemic and what we've experienced beforehand. So, and that in the context of an Australian fan as well. We were so isolated for so long, and then we obviously saw the rest of the world opening up while we were still in lockdown due to a different phase. So, I mean, you had all that element, and it just sort of exposes just how you feel. So for me, it was just actually getting there. And then when I actually got in the country, it was like a bit of a relief. But even then, it's like, something's going to happen, and there's going to be an issue here. And then, just that emotional release of just, seeing the band again and reconnecting with it.
So you had to have the code. You have to have the mask. Is that true?
Yeah. Well, that's I don't want to get too political, but California is a democratic state, so they follow all COVID policies, procedures. So you had to be double vaxxed. You had to wear a mask. It wasn't heavily the compliance aspect, I would say, and show proof of vaccine. I'll just add that, but it wasn't heavily compliant as in the compliance aspect. So it was obviously shown there was procedural aspects, but Yeah, and then there's also element around your own personal responsibility. If you want to take things even further with your own protection, which I agree with too, there was that element as well. So yeah, all that was all part of the process for the shows to go ahead. And when you looked at the timeline with Omicron, etc., like I think it was just it just was the perfect fit in and around that specific time, because I think if it was maybe delayed or there was a time lapse, there actually could have been an opportunity for it to be cancelled. So thankfully it didn't.
Yeah, come out. They had all these like stories and pictures in chronological order, and that was really, really cool to see. That Jason and Cliff, and and the road crew as well. That was really cool to sort of give them some acknowledgement. But the set list for the first night, I do believe they went from Kill 'Em All, and then they just sort of picked like maybe one or two songs from each album. I thought that was a great idea. Tell us what you thought about it.
Yeah, and you're 100% right. I think the chronological aspect of starting from their debut album and then follow that right through each individual album to their latest, to Hardwired, was a brilliant move. And again, it just that's just Metallica at their best, where they can reinvent certain things, add a little bit of surprise, and then break that sort of expectation up, and then really throw something at you around that type of element in a set list. Because you could follow a very generic sort of path, but even with that aspect of following chronologically, there's songs in there that they played that haven't been played for 10 years. There was a world premiere in there with Fixxxer.
Yeah.
So I mean, Trapped Under Ice. Look, I could go on a shorter straw.
Yeah.
There was just each specific song just fitted really well, and it was really balanced, and really you could tell that it was really thought out. And the production side of it as well, from the show, was one element I really want to emphasize, was just really brilliant. It was just a really, really brilliant show from that aspect.
Yeah. The only one sort of surprise that they didn't think, but I guess they didn't want to do something similar to the 30th anniversary shows, was having like some guests come on, like maybe Jason or Dave Mustaine.
Yeah.
Was that a sort of surprise for you, or just didn't bother you?
Not particularly. Again, as fans of the band, we sort of acknowledge all those things around. They never sort of repeat themselves. They've already done that. That was part of the 30-year. You explained it earlier around the surprise element, the special guests. Do you sort of want to follow that sort of same sort of process or pattern and try and be comparable to the 30-year shows, or do you want to sort of offer something a little bit different and go off in a different direction? So you're right. They did acknowledge band members, ex-band members throughout, not only the set list, following through certain eras of their history, but the production side. And I did see the live stream version as well, other than just being there itself. They really done that brilliantly of acknowledging ex-members and other specific people within the history of the band. So, I mean, they acknowledge them in that sense, not obviously not physically having them on stage. So, of course, there's going to be people that go, oh, it would have been great if Jason there was a jam with Jason. Of course, there's that element. Yeah. But then you're sort of missing out. Then you're sort of missing the point that we've already done that. That was acknowledged in the 30 years. We've moved away from that. We're going to do something different and not sort of repeat ourselves. So no, I didn't have an issue with not having any special guests. No.
Yeah, and I think like with the 30th, it was more intimate. So it was so there was less people there. It was small stage.
No, I was just going to say the 30-year shows, you're right, was like a smaller theatre, and you could have that, particularly from a production standpoint, you could add that element of having special guests, whereas the production side of a large-scale show like in the Chase Arena, which is huge, and just the stage production itself, like it just probably wouldn't have really fit, and it probably wouldn't have projected as well as just Jason just walking out or coming off the balcony like he did. It was just so sort of loose, and sort of there was just so much happening, but it fitted for that specific time, and it also specifically fitted for that type of theatre and that type of venue.
And when
Yeah.
you just sort of thinking of it now, it told like a good story. Like even if you weren't like a huge like Metallica fan, you could see like the chronological sort of order of their history. I thought that was really cool.
Mm. Yeah, you mean from the set list standpoint, for sure.
Yeah. For
mean, you
like a
open-
young,
you open-
like
Yeah, well, I mean, you open with "Hit the Lights," which is off their first
that's-
debut album, and then you chronologically follow down through their next releases all the way down to their latest album. So
Yeah.
there's so much back catalogue. There's so many quality songs. I mean, we could sit here all day and say, well, this, that, but you mean taking that first three songs off the first night, "Hit the Lights," "Creeping Death," "Trapped Under Ice." I mean, my God, like I was literally on my heart.
not a bad start.
Yeah, I mean, it's so high energy, fast paced, and then you go into that went into "Kill 'Em All," into "Ride the Lightning," and then you're into "Sanitarium," and then you go into "Master of Puppets." So then you went into "Sanitarium" off "Master of Puppets," and then "Orion" as well. So then then "Short of Straw," and then "One" into "Injustice for All," and then you're chronologically following down into the Black Album, and right down into your Loads and Reloads, totally different era, different type of musical direction, but it just all fitted perfectly. And then you had one of the true highlights was obviously the world premiere of Fixxxer, which is, yeah.
And you know what, like the Load and Reload, they played like in order. It didn't feel out of place, like those Load or Reload out songs. So that's really
not at all.
Mm.
No, you're 100% right there, and that's the thing, and it did expose that, if that's the word you want to use, because they are very rarely played songs in current set lists outside of any sort of special gig. They really are sort of, I use the word, it's a travesty, that they actually neglect that era to a degree, because other than maybe Fuel and Memory Remains, they're relatively the only two off those albums, and like songs like "Bleeding Me," "Wasting My Hate," they're so blues orientated, but you're right, they really do fit in with what we call the staples or the greatest hits or whatever. And it was just brilliant to experience that again, and for them to take that opportunity and to challenge themselves as well, which is another element too. They really challenge themselves and push themselves in a direction that maybe they could take into the future, which is another interesting conversation to have. And
that's my next question. It's been nearly 4 or 5 years now for Hardwired. Yeah. So surely the brains are ticking with the riffs, and Kurt's jogging on the spot where he didn't get much input for Hardwired. So when are they going to go into the recording studio, Jace?
Yeah. I mean, that's a $64,000 million question, isn't it? I mean, who really actually knows? But I mean, again, being in the fan base, and you do know people that know people. I don't want to get too much into that type of talk, but people that do know people within the context of the band are actually saying they actually are pretty far along with a new album. If that's true, again, I don't specifically know myself, but
it makes sense.
Well, what I do know, what I do know is they did the All Within My Hands benefit show at November last year. That was the last sort of public appearance they did up until March of this year, where was the 25-year anniversary of actually Master of Puppets. So they did a TV appearance for for a TV. It was actually a TV appearance. They played Battery in HQ. They actually did a couple of TV appearances in around that time. So a few interviews have actually come out, and I know James did one, which is quite strange for James, but he's very open and honest, and they had actually written quite a fair bit through the first code through COVID. In the lockdown, they were doing Zoom writing sessions, and then that sort of snowballed into them getting together for that benefit show, rolling into being more comfortable getting together and being face to face. And again, James really being open and saying, look, we've got I think it was actually 10 songs written. So I mean, we won't know that, but it could be a bit like Hardwired, where all of a sudden one day we wake up and they just, because that's just sort of way music's released these days, isn't it? There's no posters on walls saying your up and coming album in 2 weeks. It's just boom, here's a new song. So you just don't really know, do you? And as you rightly say, with festival dates coming up, rescheduled leg in South America, you just never know. It's not a bad opportunity if you're going to use those shows to promote a new album. So, yeah, there's obviously speculation and conjecture around whether a new album's not too far away. So that answers your question. I'm not quite sure, but as we know with Metallica, I mean, Metallica's, when it comes to new albums and new releases, can be quite tedious and quite frustrating at times, but that's just how they work, and this is something that we've all come to become accustomed to, really.
That's right. For years, Lars is like saying, "Oh, we want to go into the recording studio more and you know, bring out more music for the fans." And it's like, "Oh yeah, we're going to tour for 12 months here." Oh yeah, the new single's doing great, so we're going to go over here. Yeah, so yeah, that's what happens when you're the biggest band. That happens when you're one of the biggest bands in the world. So people want to see you, and I'm sure when they start like other countries start opening up, they're going to go on these big tours again. It's just the way, it is, the way it works.
Yeah, and it's always been a cycle with them too, where you studio break, escape from the studio.
Yeah,
sick of the studio. I mean, it's all been part of their history, and it's, I don't know whether it's a concentrational thing, whether it's a boredom thing, whether it's the fact is it's like they've really got to knuckle down, and I'm just not quite sure around how all that really works within that sort of inner sanctum of actually sitting down and go, look, we've actually really got to be disciplined and get this thing done. Because I think with them, it's, as you rightly say, here's an opportunity to go and do Europe. Here's another opportunity to do the US, like particularly your mainstream markets. And then, well, we haven't done Australia yet, or So it's all part of it.
Look out, Australia. You said the word, you said that country.
Yeah.
Well, any updates? No.
Well, not when we've got a state that's actually like closed off from the rest of Australia. So
that's true.
That's one element. People argue, well, other bands have booked dates here, which is true to a degree, but will they actually go ahead? We don't really know specifically around what things will be in that specific time. So I think
when the band comes out, you don't want to play two shows and then just, that's a long way to go to settle your crew.
Well, until we get all that settled and there's some certainty around how our borders all fit with each other.
Yeah.
You're not going to organise a tour, as you rightly say, from a logistical standpoint. It costs a hell of a lot of money to get gear here. So until all states come in line and there's a certainty around moving forward away from lockdowns, etc. I mean, majority of bands, I know some bands are actually starting to do it now. Maybe Metallica are looking at it and say, until there's certainty there, we're not going to book. So, and the other element is, where does it actually fit in the tour cycle? Because my personal opinion is, I think we've missed the hardwired tour cycle. So do you actually wait till you release a new album and then start in Australia? And then start in Australia. So you might be 2023, start Australia, because it's 6, 7, 8 dates max, and just kick things off here. So because again, I think even though they've rescheduled South America in that hardwired cycle and promoted it as part of the hardwired tour, I don't think Australia will fit into that. So it'll be a little bit further for us, a little bit more waiting time for us Aussies, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, they did the same thing for Load. They didn't come out to Australia for Load, but then we were the first ones for Reload. So
Paul retouring me, yes, kicked off in Newcastle actually. First show was in Newcastle, 1998.
My first show.
There you go. First show was in Newcastle. Your hometown. Your first show.
My first Metallica show was there. Yeah, the Newcastle one. Yeah. So.
That's not a bad little tick off the box.
I had AC/DC. That was first. My dad took me, and then that was Van Halen and Pearl Jam, then Metallica. So
there you go. That was a good show, actually. The Newcastle show.
Great show.
Yeah. That's when they started to incorporate the acoustic aspect into their show, which was another one of those. Not metal. Oh, what are they doing? Things questioning their insanity. What's actually happening? A metal band doing acoustic in their shows. Woo! Just another one, just to be challenged.
That's right.
What more could you want from a band?
Yeah, well, not just the metal band. The second show, I think they had 1 day off, and then they were back into it again. So, so what were your expectations for the second show?
Well, it was quite obvious what they were going to do. So so it was like they were going to flip the chronological aspect from their latest album to their last. So that was quite obvious in that sense, but it was just what they were going to actually do in between was going to be like interesting. And so I mean, they pulled out some songs they haven't played for over 10 years. A lot of people, maybe if I was going to be a little bit critical, they maybe could have pulled out another world premiere. So I have 2 world premieres back to back. Maybe another one off Reload, maybe a Prince Charming or another song that House that Jack built off Load. There's quite a few songs that they actually could have pulled out and played.
Those are the thing that James said after the end of Fixxxer. He said, "Oh, we've never played that before." Yeah, for good reasons.
Yeah, and actually on their website, it actually says this is the first time Fixxxer's been played, and also now the fan base have to obsess over another new song to be premiered. So I mean, yeah, it was obviously within the band and all the inner sanctum was a bit of a to get that one out of the way, and yeah, we need to obsess about something else they have to debut. So yeah,
it sounded really cool. Like the band might have thought that it wasn't their best performance, but yeah, they're so perfectionist. Sometimes, especially with a new one, they want to get it perfect and all that. But
yeah,
it sounded great. Like the start of it with the 2 different guitars, on the album. It's like on the 2 different, you hear it on one side, you hear it on the other side. That sounded so cool. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I had a bit of time to watch it from the live stream perspective, and then obviously being there live, and you can't draw even comparisons. And like I will say, there's an element that the live stream didn't really translate that well from some perspectives. I know, like James sounded like he was reaching with a lot of things, and of course, there's going to be an age element to that. So you can't be critical of that aspect. And I mean, if you're going to sit there and Lars misses one hi hat, and you're going to get that within the fan base. People complaining about certain things, but personally for me, I mean that's just being a Metallica fan, to be honest.
Mate, I tell you what, I was seeing all these posts in your Facebook, and sometimes I just want to go in there and go, grrr, and it's like, calm down, just let it go.
Yeah, yeah.
And I just see all these people that are just so negative and like. I want them to sound like the Injustice for All tour. It's like, what the fuck is that?
Well, just stay at home and just, I always say, just stay, put the first 4 CDs in and just.
That's right. Yeah, go.
And just there's your listening catalogue, because as you rightly said earlier, they're more than just a metal band. There's a whole there's certain eras, certain genres. They challenge themselves. They challenge their fan base. That's why they're. You don't sell only 150 million albums and have a longevity of 40 years for no small reason. So there's all those elements, and you're right. I mean, some of it can be quite ridiculous. And I'm at a stage now where my fandom and where I'm at as a fan too is I just laugh it off now. I don't get drawn into all that, because I did see the same sort of comments too about some of the performance and issues and stuff. I said, well, it's not about the performance. It's about celebrating 40 years.
That's right.
40 years of being a band, but not only a band, but a band of that status and that level that basically is a household name. You're like, that's just something not to be sort of just dismissed. So, of course, you can sit there and have your own opinion. It's not about that, but also acknowledge the fact is it's about celebrating 40 years. And that, getting back to what we spoke about initially, that's what it was for me. Wasn't so much about set lists and what they did and what they do, or ticking off another show or ticking off certain songs. It was just being there and just being able to say, I experienced that and shared that with the band. Yeah. So that's like, for me, like something that you can't take that away from that.
The Saint Anger, before Saint Anger, when Jason left and then James went into rehab, was like, they might not even be a band anymore, Metallica anymore. So to come from that stage to where they are now, that's incredible. They weren't even going to be a band. They were going to break up. So
that's so true. It's such an incredible career, and it's something to be highlighted. And you're right. There's been phases, and for a lot of us, I include myself, is that like we were actually living that real time. It wasn't like finding a band at a certain period after a certain thing. It was actually like starting listening to the band around 86. You're living that like at real time. So there was periods where like the change of direction and the 180 in musical direction and the change of look, and then trying to appeal to a different type of demographic, and then chopping and changing, and then obviously people leaving the band, people going into rehab, all those elements. It's like a life in itself. So again, getting back to my point is it's just something really worth celebrating. So I mean, putting all that aside, of course the songs are all that are one of the most important aspects, and of course the set list is, but the main part is just celebrating the fact is they've been around for 40 years.
Yeah.
So I mean that's the main point about the whole thing. But I mean, it was interesting from night one to night two and how they actually did that. And again, getting back to your question was, I actually thought they did that really well. And through the set list and pulling out some songs like Bleeding Me.
Yeah.
Hasn't been played other than through acoustic avenues for 10 years. That's a travesty.
Australia.
But that's the quality of, I mean, I'm not quite sure specifically when the last time it was 10 years ago. So, I mean, and then songs like Wasting My Hate, and again, we spoke about before, they transition really well in the set list with songs that come from a more metal approach, but they still fit well in a set list. So again, it's going to be interesting to see if they take anything from these shows and then move that into the future and where they sort of look at their set list and how they can sort of evolve and move into the future, but also pulling out some other issues and challenging themselves and their fan base.
Yeah. Well, James's voice sounded great again. I don't know what people were complaining about with James's voice. His singing was fantastic again. You could just tell, like before our last podcast that we did talking Metallica, it was James was in the rehab when we were talking about that. So I think he made his first appearance at that stage. So, and you look at that now, you see the photos of him at S&M2 and what he had to go through to now. You'd swear that nothing happened. And
it's two different people, really.
Back to normal, right?
It's two different people, really. But I mean, it's also something that needs to be acknowledged and continue to be acknowledged. That there's an element of being a band of Metallica status and we spoke about it earlier about adding shows and dates and moving forward. That needs to be put in place that protects specifically James and protects his mental health and how the band move forward in that. So what happens is we all get caught up in as fans, they're coming here and they're playing more shows, and James can be quite. So the word I'm looking for is he can be quite vulnerable in that sense. So and how that's going to be managed. So it's going to be interesting to see how they manage that, because I would say the 40-year shows, from being there live and just seeing the intensity and the energy and the power that they portrayed live and in that live setting was really, really amazing. But that's going to be the challenge for them to actually be consistent in and around those things, because leading up to S&M2, you could sort of see such a deterioration of those elements as they went through that tour cycle, and actually having seen them through 2016 and shows in 2017 and having a bit of a break between those dates was interesting too. So you could actually see a deterioration of those things. So that's going to be the challenge for them moving forward. It's going to be interesting how they, again, move forward as a band to protect themselves physically, because, they are getting close to 60-year-old now. So, and keeping their legacy alive around those things too, because as you know, as a musician, it's a fine line, because if you push it too far, you start to dilute that legacy of what you're actually renowned for. Because again, that 40 Year show really highlighted that level of really highlights it still at that level. So that'll be the challenge for them moving forward, particularly around those elements.
And I think too, and don't quote me on this, but the last, when they come to Australia, I don't think they bring their families. I think they're all sort of flying private jets all to Australia. They stay in the one city, and they just sort of fly to Perth. They fly to Adelaide. Well, that's what they did on the last major tour that they did in Australia. They all stayed in Sydney, and then they flew to all the different cities. So I remember seeing pictures of James, like he's taking photos in his hotel, no family. So I'm, like we've just said, like maybe that's what he's sort of worrying about.
And that is the challenge for the band, isn't it? And specifically for him. I mean, he needs to find strategies, etc., to like make sure that when you are starting to get that point where you are starting to feel burnout and you are starting to think about making some wrong decisions around personal choices, that's the point where you've got to stop it, not let it progress into certain things, and then where you cancel a full tour.
Yeah.
So I mean that's the point that they're at, and so that's the point that I'm trying to make is things have to be put in place now moving forward. So it's going to be interesting to see actually how they do that, because we've gone, as you rightly say, they tour in certain elements. They've scaled back as in dates, as in consecutive days, maybe six dates over 12 days, and then a 2-week break. So I mean, how much more can you push that? So if you do 6 shows, is it another month?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not quite sure how you actually manage all that, because is it feasible through logistics? I mean, it's a pretty complicated sort of area to go into, but to protect the longevity of the band, it's going to be something that obviously they're thinking about, and it's going to be interesting to see what they actually do.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back just a little bit, like before they played the 40th anniversary shows, they played like maybe, I don't know, maybe a month or maybe 2 or 3 weeks of shows in the US. I noticed that if they played 2 shows in the one city, the first night would be like a greatest hits without the Black Album, and then the next show would be the whole Black Album. Did you have any friends or people that went to those shows?
So what happened? Yeah. So what happened? That was the DWP, the Demi Wimmer Presents US Festival Consortium. So there's 3 or 4 or 5 different festivals that the band was scheduled to play last year. So that got rescheduled for this year. So they actually kicked off with 2 warm-up shows. So they actually played two actually club theatre shows, one in San Fran at the Independent, which was a small 200-seater venue, and at the Metro in Chicago.
Chicago, yes.
Yeah, so these were like surprise just warm-up shows for that festival run. Then they kicked things off in Kentucky at the Louder Than Life, which is part of that rescheduled festival run. And then they went to Aftershock in Sacramento, and then they finished that off with Rockville, which was in Florida. So what they actually did was those US festivals are a 3-day festival. They played on the Friday night and on the Sunday. The Friday night, as you correctly said, was no Black Album songs, but then they played the Black Album in full on the Sunday. So basically what it was was a no repeat song festival, which was really, really interesting and a really, really new sort of approach to how they actually either sign with those festivals and offer their shows. And in Lars' words, it was a bit of an experiment. And personally, I didn't actually see any of the shows. I spoke to a lot of friends, etc. that actually did, and they thought they were really great. But again, if you're comfortable to see the Black Album played in full, which I certainly have an issue with, but I mean, of course you are, but some people will. But I mean, it's just a different way and approach of challenging yourself and putting forward, particularly two appearances at one festival.
Yeah, the one thing that sort of stuck out is we were talking about their age. Like they started the set off with Whiplash.
Yeah.
So no time
Brilliant.
for mucking around, no time for warming up, just bang straight into Whiplash. That was so cool.
Yeah, and that the majority of those set lists was Whiplash into Ride the Lightning into Harvester. So there was like a trio of just bangers. And again, it sort of, and it points to back to the 40 year shows, just the level of intensity and energy that they're actually showing at the moment is really, really encouraging moving forward. But again, it's going to be the challenging part is maintaining that. So we're at that point again where they're going to have to find a way to manage that and to try and maintain that level. So it's going to be interesting.
We're just getting back to the 40th anniversary shows. That Lars was on fire. He was like loving it. He was so pumped up. I saw some YouTube clips, and the band sounded great. James is sounding great too. Very tight. Just getting back on board, right? You know, having that time off during COVID, and it's just like the Saint Anger. We just really fired up to just get out there and play again. So I think that shows the best out of Metallica.
Well, that's the silver lining in it all too, that they're having a bit of time to reassess, to rejuvenate, to sort of contemplate where everything sits, particularly for James. You know, do I want to invest, or what am I willing to give to put myself in that position again? And I think, that time was all beneficial. So that's the silver lining of the pandemic. And again, it'll be interesting to see from a new writing, new material aspect where that's going to transition into. So all that's really exciting. So I'm really excited for that, where this period and what that's brought out of James, because as we're seeing through his evolving as a songwriter, etc., when he goes through those real personal challenges, some of his lyrics can be like, and like you wouldn't classify. Well, I do, but in general music, you wouldn't classify like his writing skills as a songwriter is not really what you know. Is what Metallica is known for, but some of his lyrics, and particularly those more personal records like Load, where he got real central, become really specific to himself, like brilliant. So it's going to be interesting to see where this period and where new material sort of fit into that.
Takes him, yeah, absolutely, yeah. Those Load. I think his mother pass away like just before the Load recordings or the Load sessions, and he had a lot of emotion in those in the lyrics sort of side of it too. Like, so yeah, let's see where he goes. It's all exciting, like you said, very exciting. Big landmark, achievement for Metallica. The 30th anniversary of the Black Album, where they're actually getting all these different types of musicians and artists to redo these songs.
Reinterpret's the word. So it was actually called the Blacklist. So it was called the Blacklist. So you're right. They released the remastered 30-year anniversary of the Black Album, and alongside that, they released an album called the Blacklist, which was a whole different range of artists that interpreted all the songs off the Black Album. So you had 12 versions of Enter Sandman, 14 versions. So it was quite actually overwhelming, to be honest. And again, I really couldn't speak too much on it because I did lose a little bit of interest, because it was just a little bit, for me, it was just a little bit too much of so many different versions of the same song. But again, it was their opportunity to sort of get other artists to reinvent or reinterpret their songs. And it was a good marketing ploy, because how they actually sold it was they went on American TV. Actually, I think it was Howard Stern, which is a syndicated, huge radio syndicated program in the States, and they did a collaboration with Miley Cyrus. So with Nothing Else Matters. So she did a version with Elton John on the Blacklist as well. So so again, it was just another way to reinvent themselves. Obviously there's a business side to that as well, of marketing side, and finding another way to be a little bit more mainstream.
I'm hearing it in all the Major League Baseball, especially. That was their theme song. It was the Miley Cyrus version. one of the new movies that came out like at the end of last year.
The Jungle Book, was it? The
Yeah,
Jungle
that's
Book,
it.
or-
Yeah,
Yeah.
nothing else. I was like,
Yeah.
hang on, this sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Not the original version, but it's it's getting it out there. It's getting the song to people that would never spend any time to listen to Metallica, and think, oh, there you go.
And that's part of the business side of again finding other ways to get your name into certain sectors and being more mainstream.
Yeah.
So I mean, it is a good business angle, and another avenue now, and it's really huge. And I saw a lot of it in the US is the black and whiskey.
Oh yes.
The black and whiskey, which is giving it a bit of a plug, but check it out. I think it's through Grog Lords in Australia, but in the US it's huge, and the merchandise side of it is like actually really mind blowing, and particularly from the fan base. I mean, I haven't really gravitated towards it. So the signed bottles and just all the different versions, and like it's just huge, and particularly in the collector's world, it is massive.
Right. Yeah.
It was actually a real eye-opener. I was actually like really blown away. And you're talking about some of the biggest collectors in the Metallica fan base, and you get that opportunity to have conversations and feel their passion, what their passion is for the band, and a lot of it's collecting and all that element, which is brilliant. So because it's not my thing, so I really feed off the energy that they have for what their passion is and what they develop what they're gravitated towards for that. So I mean, Blackhams. So that was a really eye-opener too. So again, they're finding ways to get their name into certain other elements other than just the music. So again, another brilliant decision, because that's, I mean, people were lining up 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning to get signed bottles.
Wow.
Yeah. So
have you
3 or 4 o'clock in the morning.
Have you tried it, mate? Or did you get a chance to use it?
Yeah. It is a good drop. So in comparative terms to the Enter Night beer, the beer that they actually, that's chalk and cheese. So that was quite tasteful. Like, that's been positive. But black and whiskey is actually quite nice. So I was lucky and fortunate. I've got a couple of bottles when I was away. So it's actually quite. It is a quite nice drop if you like like the whiskey, and it is through your. I think you can get it now through Grog Lords. So I'm plugging the whole thing off here. Grog Lords in Australia. I think it's all through online, but I think you can get it at through your local bottle-os, etc. Now I think. So don't quote me on all that, but again, it's pretty popular in the collector's world, which is very, very interesting.
Yeah. Sorry, I want to get back to the Molly Cyrus thing. When before they did the actual song, they got John on a live stream, and Elton John was talking about the song and what it means to him and all that. And he said it's one of the I don't know the quote, but he said something like one of the
greatest songs of all time. One of the greatest songs of all time.
And then James started crying. He just got very emotional. And he said for Elton John Lars was like the only one sort of not crying, but he was like the only one that could talk. And he just said, for you to say that's just for James. That's just he was just talking for James. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he actually said it was one of the greatest, most beautiful pieces of music that he's ever heard. I think that was more along the lines of what he actually said.
Yes.
And I actually have to agree with him. I mean, it is a beautiful song. It is a beautiful song, and what the meaning behind it, the meaning behind it, the lyrical aspect, and how the band then took that into the mainstream was like, and then how that song, and this goes back to the 40 Year shows, is a really important step into acknowledging 40 years of the band, because a lot of people saying or suggesting why acknowledge Nothing Else Matters or NSM and they get overplayed, etc. But how could you not acknowledge those songs?
Yes, of course.
If you're selling, particularly if you're selling it, and the actual name of the shows were 40 Years of Metallica, that was the wording, 40 Years of Metallica. How could you not acknowledge those songs in their history? Like you have to. So from my perspective, like you had to play those songs.
Yeah, we wouldn't be talking if they didn't.
No, you wouldn't have a 40 years without Metallica, without those specific songs. So I get it from the perspective of the next level fan that might get to make, particularly the US fans or European fans that get to every second show or most shows. But I mean,
they got to think about it from a like a young fan.
And if you're, and this includes me in this conversation because that's where I show my passion and dedication is getting to the show. I've got to accept if I'm going to make that commitment and passion to go to a show that they're going to play those songs.
You're going to hear that.
So
yeah.
I mean, it's just, I know that's quite obvious, but it's actually quite true. And then you've got to accept that that's going to be the case. So there are certain staple songs like you can include Puppets in that. You can include One. Quite actually surprising they actually didn't play For Whom the Bell Tolls at the 40 Year shows. That was the one surprise outside of the set list. So I'll just put that in there. But then nothing else matters. Like those songs are always going to be in the set list, and you've just got to accept that and move on. That's the challenge for the band is how you work around other albums and eras, and then include them, and then having a more broader perspective or broader outlook on what songs you're actually playing in your shows. Because I think not having any of the Reload or late era songs has been sort of a little bit peculiar, but again, that's the challenge that they have with such a massive and incredible backlog, back catalogue.
And you're trying to fit the new songs from the new album, and if it's successful, you want to put 4 or 5 songs in there, and then what songs do you take out to replace the new songs? And that's exactly it. I mean, a lot of that all does fall on Lars, but as you've seen, and we know this with Saint Anger, is those songs have a different, in my opinion, those songs have such a different feel live. Oh yeah.
So I mean, the production elements around Saint Anger, we can argue all day around the drum sound, etc. But when you hear them songs live, they have a different feel. So even including them, so at the 40 Year shows, we had Frantic, but then we also had Dirty Window, which was like, for me, another one, just such a bouncy, heavy, bouncy groove, and such a great metal riff, and that staccato into that real stop change, heavy sort of bouncy, like again, it's such a different feel live. So.
That was
they've got a lot to think about.
For the Saint Anger tour in Australia, that was a standard song in the set for that whole tour. They were playing 3 songs off Saint Anger, Frantic, and Dirty Window. Every show. I think they on the last show they put The Unknown Feeling in instead of
that was the Maya Music Bowl, which was a sideshow.
Yes.
Because I actually went to that show as well, because I actually went to the 2 festival shows in Sydney, and I couldn't get the time off work to get to the festival show in Melbourne. But I thought, well, I did a sideshow, which I actually did in Brisbane as well. And those sideshows you're right, but some of those sideshows were incredible. And you're right.
Yeah.
Those Saint Anger songs were just they're brutally heavy. Yeah. And that have that real Metallica trademark middle section. You know, that real staccato.
And Kurt Hammett playing the solo where it probably would have been in when they were working out the song. So it was also good to hear that Kurt just like wailing away.
Yeah, just a bit of improvised solo in a song that didn't have and essentially have a solo. So I mean, all that, and they just enjoying themselves really. But I mean, getting back to the main,
Sorry, I was just going to say. Kurt Hammett was saying also that he couldn't believe the outcry for not having the solos in it. So, everywhere they went, I don't think I've heard a Saint Anger song live that doesn't have a solo in there. So,
well, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, that period of time is really relatable to the album itself. Yeah. So, I mean, no solos. I mean, the drum sound. I mean, we can all it's sort of rehashing a lot of old. I mean, but it's a representation of where their headspace was through their music. That's how you can sum up Saint Anger.
I say Saint Anger is that they're still a band.
But that's right, and that's what actually transitioned them from that period into another phase of their career. And it is a really important album from a timeline perspective. But I'll say it again, live, those songs are killer. So again, this is a challenge that they've got, if that's the word you want to use, moving forward. And I'm sort of hoping that the 40-year shows has really highlighted that you can put certain songs from certain albums, certain eras, and they all fit in a well-balanced set list. And when we can sort of chop and change certain things and not get a little bit static in and around our choices. So that's my hope moving forward around particularly the set list anyway.
Yeah. And like getting back to the 40th anniversary, like the 30 years of the Black Album, it just shocks me. Amazes me how time flies. Like, have you got that? Have you got the mastered, the reissue of the Black Album? Tell us about that.
Well, I got the deluxe box set, which was for fan club members, and which then become available pretty well worldwide. That was just a lot of there was 3 DVDs from each different era of the different leg of the 3 years of the Black Album. So from the Monsters of Rock, which was 1990, you had a 1991, which was in the middle of the Wherever We May Roam, and then you had the Nowhere Else to Roam, which was 1993. So you had all that different era and different phases of the album, which was really brilliant from a DVD perspective, and you see the involvement of how those songs sort of fitted in the set list. And then you just go into a lot of different versions, different sort of production values. So there's like a mixed element there. And there's a lot of different memorabilia. And it was actually out of the remastered box sets that they've actually done. For me, it's actually my favourite.
Yeah, right.
So they've actually done the remastered box set for their last 5 albums. This one's actually my favourite. So I mean, yeah, there's so much to unpack in all of it, in a sense, but it just really highlights that era. And for me, it's like the pinnacle of their career. I don't think, for me, there's no argument of that. I think that was as good as they actually got, and I would like about, and easily probably the best band in the world at that specific time.
Yeah, because like
commercial.
When they were like promoting it, like before it come out, they had Jason, talk about a few stories about the Black Album and recording and what basses he used and all that sort of stuff. So I think that would sort of prompted that he might appear somewhere down in the future, but it didn't actually happen. Yeah. So it was good to see.
Obviously there's chemistry there around what Bob Rock brought to those songs.
Oh, yeah.
So absolutely. What he did was he actually, from a musical standpoint, he got Jason not just to follow the guitar line, was actually work more with the bass. So have a rhythm section, and what that brought was a different element to the band, which brought that real groove orientated element into the band. Then that power groove, which Metallica then become really, really famous for.
Yeah.
And I actually think that I think that in the pocket groove, that power groove, and that real heaviness, like the Sabbath True type songs, is actually where Hetfield's voice really comes and really, really matured into what we know as James now. It started in Justice, don't get me wrong, but then it evolved into the Black Album, which then evolved into the live setting, and I think that's where they really hit their peak and their pinnacle of their career. And that was like, again, particularly from a commercial mainstream sense, Metallica were probably the biggest band in the world at that particular time.
Yeah, absolutely. Did Bob Rock actually mix the mastered version, or was it the guy from the Hardwired to Self-Destruct?
No, so it was the Hardwired, Greg Filderman.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So
Bob Rock didn't have anything to do with it, or no?
No, not from the remastered standpoint.
So the remastered version, like I've only heard Sandman and I think Sad But True. So like for you, is there any sort of difference? Or is it just like makes it louder?
Yeah. Well, I use the word, it just pops a little bit more. So I mean, there's elements around the vocal delivery and the elements, but I mean, it's not drastically that different, because you know why? Because it's a goddamn perfectly produced album already.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
when you actually hear this is my point around the other remastered box sets, and you hear the actual remaster, you can hear sort of a significant difference in some of those other those reissues. But the Black Album is not really that much of a great difference. But again, for me, it was so much more of the live setting and seeing them live again at that particular point, because they were right, particularly when you see the 1990s, which was they did a tour for the Monsters of Rock, which was with AC/DC, and they did shows through Europe to promote the Black Album. So 1990, and you could they were on the cusp of like going to that next level, and there was a real sense of, when you heard them live, a real sense of confidence that was getting exposed, and just a level of power and intensity. And it was like, this band is just about to like implode, and you could see it in that live performance. But then that snowballs into actually when they're on that specific tour after the album was released, and that's what you see. You see a real confidence, particularly in James, just with his body language and his his banter between songs. You know, just the drum sound, all those components just sort of rolled into like that specific time, just highlighting just how crushing and just what level they got to, and it's actually really crescended into them sort of going into other areas and other genres, but they really maintained a level right up until as we speak today, like that one specific album.
And you were there in '93 for the Black Album in Australia.
Yeah.
So what are some of your memories of those shows?
Memories of those. Well, again, like my journey started with Metallica around '86, so I actually saw them in '89. So there was a transition from like that real, like brutal, real angry, real like that the heavy metal aspect. But then seeing them in '93 was there was a real, again, it's what I actually just mentioned before. There was a real confidence and a real level of professionalism and musicianship, but it was. But also the power and intensity. Yeah. So polished, great word, polished, real polish with everything that they were doing, and that was a sense what I can actually remember. And again, it's like, even when I see them now, there's this sense of like, there'll be a period of a song or a moment where you're getting in a song where you're just going, holy shit. You know, like when you see a band like Metallica, like it's like, holy shit, you know, there'll be an element in a song, or there'll be like a passage, and you'll go, wow. And I can remember that on that specific tour, because again, the Justice tour was like actually just surviving in the pit. Like that's how I remember it. It was like you're a teenage, just getting Horden Pavilion, the old Horden Pavilion. So again, it was the first time in the pit, first time being exposed to that type of band, first time for, you know, first time of experiencing that level of intensity in a show, and you're actually just trying to survive, because there's elements of copping stray elbows and trying to breathe, and you know, get all that. But then going to a 3 or 4 years later, seeing them in a like Sydney Entertainment Centre, which was at that specific time was like the state of the art. So it was like that next step. And my point is they were just more than ready to go to that next level. Like they were just made to go to that next level. And that's what it actually highlighted, was they were just ready to go from just that underground metal, angry, I've got a point to prove, chip on the shoulder type band, to like, we are the biggest band in the world, and we're going to fucking actually show you. And so that's the sort of level of confidence, you know, with James and his, you know, that's where all that posturing and, you know, all that sort of element of him being that front man really become established. Yes. So like for me, like that, the acknowledgement of that era and how I feel about that era will always be the same. It will always be, for me, the apex of their career.
Looking back at it, just like you said, they were in their prime. And '93 for Australia, I mean, they probably had done like 100 shows, 150 shows before that anyway. So they were right into the groove. Like they knew what songs were coming up, and you know, just very onto it.
Yeah, so we got the what was classified then as the last leg of the Black Album tour, which was the Nowhere Else to Roam leg. So we got we actually didn't get the Snake Pit configuration arena stage show. We got the outdoor configuration, which was converted for the Australian shows, which then they went to Europe and did a outdoor stadium run, which was the back end of the Black Album. So you're right. So we got that right at the very back end, which was probably a good thing because they were right in that zone of just being right in sync. And, you know, as Jay said, we're just a well-oiled machine. And that's probably a good way to describe it, to be honest. They were just right in that sweet spot of knowing what worked, what didn't work. Set lists were great. I mean, the Black Album songs all fitted really well within older material. And that's
Justice melody and, you know,
I mean, all that Seek and Destroy 15-minute version of Seek and Destroy, all that element, you know, and you'd literally walk out. And I can remember even to this day, is like literally those shows, you literally walk out and you just lay on the ground, and you'd like it'd take you a week. It'll literally take you a week to actually get over the shows, because there was still that element of, it was aggressive, but there was all those elements of that type of music. But it was just a great era to be involved with the band and being a fan of the band for sure.
And by the time that the concert's finished, normally at the entertainment centre, only McDonald's would only be open.
That's right. That's right. Straight.
Everyone's lining up to get iced water, and then all of a sudden, because the lineup was outside the door, they started charging like $1 for ice water, and it's like, oh, you grubs!
You remember the entertainment centre was right near Chinatown.
Yes.
So what you used to do was you go to the shows, and then everyone filled up, and there'd be a couple of the Chinatown pubs.
Yeah.
So they'd all go, they'd be the only ones that would take I wouldn't say stupid, but obviously they're thinking from a financial standpoint, well, we've got these bands, like, just realistically they shouldn't have been open. But we're going to open because all the pubs and all that around the entertainment centre be closed, but all the Chinatown specific bars and clubs would open. We go, well, we're just going to get people to come in. I can remember, like, after one of the Metallica shows, I think it was in '98, we ended up back there, and you'd be sitting there drinking Chinese beer and stuff, like 2 o'clock in the morning. You know, like they were really good old days before they actually closed it down. They've actually put it all down now. So
yeah, I heard that.
No longer exists. Yeah, no longer exists now. Unfortunately,
changed all names, but I think like they're going to the Acer Arena or whatever it's called now.
Kudos.
Kudos. Yeah. Is there talks of getting the entertainment centre back together? There's a bit of a landmark there with so many good bands.
No, actually, it's all been redeveloped, buddy. It's a beautiful redeveloped public living space. Beautiful restaurants, bars, living accommodation. It's actually really beautiful. So all that area through there now, which goes into Darling Harbour, is all been redeveloped. So they pulled all that down, and you get to the Glasshouse Brewery and etc. at the top end of Darling Harbour. Yeah, check it out.
And sorry, one more thing about the Black Album. I watched a bootleg of the Sydney. Bobby again. Cheers, Bobby. Haven't seen you for a while, mate. Bobby, standard Lupton.
Yeah.
He, like, the shows went for well and truly over 3 hours.
3 hours. 3 hours.
You know, with guitar solos and drum solos and bass solos. So gone are those days. Like, not even other bands are doing 3 hour shows. It's normally like a 2 hour. That's the cutoff. But 3 hours. Wow.
3 hours, and then the US shows, and the arena show itself. They had a specific movie, which was like the making of the Black Album and their career, etc., which was like the making of the Metallica, etc. So there was like a specific movie, and they cut to them in the change room. You've obviously seen the live ship Binge and Purge. Yeah. So that was like obviously a big part of that main tour. But the Australian leg, etc. We actually got a band called Caius.
Oh yeah,
which was mate, they were really good. So they were really good. So not only did he get 3 hours of Metallica, he got like a good 45 minutes of a really solid support act. Yeah. So I mean, that's what I really remember about that tour too. They were really big up and coming band at that specific time too. So really original sound.
And I can't remember how many shows did they play on that tour.
300, I think.
No, for Australia, yeah.
Oh, that specific tour.
2 or 3 in each city.
I think they played. I know they played 3 in Sydney because they actually sold the first 2 and then put a third show on, which in the schedule became the first show.
Oh,
So
gotcha.
so I actually went to the three. So all they did was they played two nights with night three and night two were the same, and night one, which became the third, was a different. They changed maybe one or two songs out of the encore, but was all pretty structured around the same sort of set list. So I mean, if you're looking for sort of different type, if you're looking for a real ever changing set list at that specific time, it really wasn't the case. It was really really structured, but the songs were so strong. I don't think it really mattered. But again, we're talking about 3 hour shows, and it was a different era too. And it wasn't like now where you're getting real time information. You're getting like people have opportunities to discuss, and you got your forums, and you got Facebook groups and all that.
Just
all
magazines,
real time.
right?
Yeah. I mean, real time. Or like I mean, the only way you knew the only way I knew
radio
where they actually were was actually I remember the tour program.
Yeah, right.
The tour program you bought at the show, and you'd actually look where they've been. Or you're right, you'd get a Kerrang or a Raw or a Metal Edge from the local news agent, which was 3 months behind anyway due to import lag. So I mean, the whole thing was a completely different era how we digested everything. So you add that to the shows as well, where now it's, you know, if you compare what the World Magnetic Tour, look at the set list on that, and I mean you experienced this as much as anybody. Like, 40. I think they played 21 shows. 21 shows in Australia and New Zealand with 44 different songs. 44 different songs, 21 shows in Australia. You'll never ever see that again, ever.
Yeah.
Ever.
I went to all of them.
So there you go.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Actually, the only one I didn't do was Christchurch. But I did the Auckland, and I did the whole.
So there you go. So I can remember I think I did about 10. I know I did all majority of the East Coast. I didn't do the Perth and I didn't do Adelaide, but I remember the back end of the Melbourne shows, and I can remember it was like Phantom Law, Clover, Dyer's Eve, I Disappear, like all in one show. And then if you add the other, I think they did. Don't quote me. I think they did 5 Melbourne shows and 4 Sydney shows. That's right, because So I did 1 Brisbane. So you add those songs to like the other 4 shows with. I mean, I could just rattle on. Jump in the Fire. There was Bread Fan. There was Am I Evil? There was a whole different range of different stuff. Like again, 44 different songs.
Ticking off the list, you know, it was a good time to just like
Trapped Under Ice.
Yeah, because like they were just. I think what they were doing is if they had 3 or 4 shows in the one, they'd just like pick a particular album and then put like songs around it, and then the next night it'd be Puppets, and then they put songs around that, and then Justice for All put songs around that. So we're very, very lucky for that tour, because that was like the end of the tour, right? So that
was the end of the tour.
Yeah, they were getting getting ready for, and they were really happy. The band was just really in a good mood at that time. So that was some really good times.
And you think of the logistics of that tour as well, because I know for a fact what they were doing was they were doing 2 weeks worth of shows and then going home.
They went back to the US.
Yeah, and then they come back 3 or 4 times to Australia. I mean, that's the point there around. We were discussing it before. I mean, you just can't do that now. Like you just physically. They just physically wouldn't be able to do that for a whole different range of reasons, and not only from a logistical standpoint, but just managing that type of show, that level. I mean, and that's my point around. You'll never ever see that in Australia again, which is sad, but it's also just a reality of just where the band is at. So,
and that was at that time. That's what I was thinking, like grabbing that opportunity, like to having to travel to the US to see 1 or 2 shows. It's in my backyard. They're playing 20 shows. Let's see if I can do it.
It's incredible that you're able to do that. And again, it's all about timing, isn't it? I mean, we're all in different aspects and timings of our life. And I mean, and again, if you're in a fortunate situation where you can have the ability to do that, or for whatever reason, whether work commitments or relationship commitments, etc., because again, it's a challenging thing, and I have these discussions with a lot of people within the fan base about being an Australian fan. And the thing for us is not so much, and it's never ever about show numbers. It's just the level of dedication it actually takes and loyalty to stick with the band, because for one, majority of the fan base actually don't get to see them other than maybe every 5 or 6 years, but they're still loyal enough and supportive enough to stick with the band. So that's why I'll always respect a lot of the Australian fans like yourself, and there are a lot of others. But then if you do have that ability and opportunity, you actually make such a level to actually travel, and that element of and the lengths you actually go to actually travel. And I don't think a lot of the other fan base actually really understand, because obviously they don't. It's no different to the opportunities that they have, because they're an American band. Yeah. You know, they're an American band, so obviously they're going to have an opportunity to see them more. So, I mean, it's always interesting to get around and have a chat with people that are at that level and make seeing Metallica their priority. So I'm talking people that have seen them 150, 200 times.
Yeah.
So it's amazing to sit down with people like that and their stories, and seeing them with Cliff, or seeing them multiple times on the Black Album, or, you know, seeing them multiple times in different venues and all those opportunities. So, I mean, it's such a wide and varied and for me, very respectable fan base.
Well, I just remember like going to that Tommy's joint and just meeting these people that have, you know, I saw him on the Master of Puppets tour with Cliff playing, and just mind blowing. Just like, tell me more. Like, I'm a Spartan. You come on.
Well, that's the point which we spoke about it initially was, and I really want to discuss this too, is that they actually sold the weekend as Metallica Takeover. So not only did you have Metallica in their 2 shows, you also had elements of a side project, which was the wedding party.
Yeah.
Kirk and Rob have a side project called the wedding party. So you have, I think it's ex Ugly Kid Joe. I think it's Whitfield Crane's the lead singer from that, and you've got ex Queen of Stone. What is it? Queen of Stone Age ex guitarist, and they're a cover band. Like they were playing covers like Aces. They were playing AC/DC. So let me frame it. This was night 1. You had the Metallica show night 1, and then at the Fillmore, they had the wedding party after night one show. So the wedding party. So what happened was it was actually brilliant. Someone within the fan base, I'll give her a rap, Kirsten. She's actually a member of my Facebook group. Decided to put a bus element to it, so you could leave on the bus and get to the Fillmore, because that was always going to be the most difficult part, just from logistics. But what happened was it actually went from my Facebook group into the main official forum. So there was initially going to be, so it was actually 5 buses. There was over 300 people.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was just one element of that was just made the whole thing amazing. So long story short is we did night 1, and then we all filtered on to get all these buses. We're all crowded on these buses, and then we all get bused to the Fillmore. Yeah. And then we're all ready to go and see. They had memorabilia, wristbands and everything. So they all went to the next level to acknowledge the bus them all. Yeah, so just a small another little layer. And you're right. And you get talking to people, and you get, sitting on the bus with someone from Germany or Poland or Czechoslovakia or wherever, another part of the US, and you're just having these discussions and like some of the stories are just amazing. Like, I saw Cliff, and we were just hanging out backstage, had a couple of beers, we saw him in Fresno, and and just some of the stories, and like it's just amazing. So the history some people have with the band.
Yeah.
So I mean, that was another element.
I actually didn't know, to be honest. I didn't know. Like my friend Chris, who went to the Metro show in Chicago, they also went to the 40th. Chris and Katie.
Yeah.
And they said, "Oh yeah, have you got your tickets for the wedding party?" And I was like, "Who?" And it's like, "The wedding party. Are you going or not?" It's like, I don't know.
So what happened was they sold it under the Metallica. It was all part of a ticket process which fell under Metallica takeover of obviously San Francisco, which all fell under the 40-year umbrella. So
Oh,
there
that
was
was that like Rod Halfon, like the book launch?
yeah. So So you had opportunities for there was a Ross Halfon book signature event. There was actually a trivia night leading up to the first show, which was done by Stefan Shirazi, which was brilliant. I actually went. It was brilliant.
Cool guy.
So it was just a fun night, just with a whole different range of different fan bases from around the world. Actually hung with a lot of the Brazilian militia. They're actually crazy, like most passionate fans. But then also what they added was they actually had the night between two shows. They actually had, and this is very interesting. So you had three bands. Bastanaine, they're an up and coming band. Castor Hetfield on drums.
Oh, interesting.
Then you also had you had another band called Taipei Houston, which is Lane and Lane.
Does he play
Miles,
bass?
Lane and Miles. So they're actually both sons.
Wow.
And then you have a band called Otto, which is Ty Trillo.
Oh, right.
So this was all part of the ticket process. So you have options to go to all these, or you could actually buy the whole package. And basically, there was memorabilia added, and it was called an upgrade package. And there was memorabilia. There was everything. A friend of mine got it. There was like every shirt they released. So this is a 40-year shirt. All the posters, all the memorabilia. They got a signed. Set list from each night. So it was an upgrade. So you actually had access to go to each individual event. So
did you go to those shows like with the sons?
Yeah. I mean, Otto. Anyone listening, do yourself a favor and listen. Otto is one band that is actually going places. So they're a three-piece, just really, and we were talking about Kai's before. That real bass heavy, really down picking, really that real power groove. So it really fits into that mold. The Taipei Houston is a bit like the White Stripes.
Oh yes.
That real that's how I describe them. Again, I'm not a musical aficionado around describe like that. I mean that fit in that sort of groove. I actually didn't get to see Bastanaine, but they've been around for actually a while. But Castor's apparently just come on board as a new drummer. So I actually didn't get to see them. But James was up. You see James up in the and the other band members were all up in a section up in the prefects of the building. So you could actually see them all up there, all giving you high fives. Possibility come out for a jam. But again, it was about giving their sons an opportunity to get exposed. But I tell you, they're three great bands. So I mean, they'll find their own way in the world and through their own musical talent. Actually, brilliant.
And because I do remember that Rob Trujillo's son, I can't think of his name. He played in Korn for one tour because Fieldy got sick or something, or he left the band. He filled in on bass for the rest of the tour. Wow.
Yeah. So it's his band. Otto is his band. Right. So, or not his band, but he's part of that band. So, and a big part of their sound because it is real bass heavy, and they are heavy. And I mean, they were really, really good. So, I mean, they were really a band to look out for. And then you add that to the Wedding Party, which they are strictly a cover band, but you've got some really established musicians, and like it was just amazing to see Kirk and Rob after doing a 2-hour Metallica set, then go on and do that till like 3 o'clock in the morning. It's like, they didn't kick off till midnight. So I was at least 2 o'clock in the morning. So I mean, those boys, man, have got some energy, and that's the thing. I mean, if they really look after them,
Yeah, I saw Kirk there like playing the song, and he was thrashing himself around. Yeah. He was like having the ball, Kirk. Yeah.
So again, just the cover band. So there was Ace of Spades. There was I remember Livewire from AC/DC, Highway to Hell.
Nice.
Just a lot of like old school sort of rocky sort of sound, but again, just really established musicians with a whole just a high level of quality, and I was just in a mind funk, just going, this is just unbelievable. And again, because you just experienced night one of of the 40-year shows, and then all that element, and it was all fun, and you're hopping on a bus, and it was all, and everyone's high-five, and it was just like a big Metallica family, and it's just all people from all around the world, and you hop on a bus and you go to Fillmore, and that brought up a lot of memories and etc. emotions from the 30-year shows, because we all stood out in line. That's where you and I met.
Yeah.
You and I met. That's how I vividly remember you and I, me being in line. I was with a lot of French. I was with a French crew, because I actually was his +1 for the 30-year shows, and I just remember hearing that Aussie accent, like 3 or 4 rows back.
Yeah.
And I walked up and said, "How are you, mate? Oh, where you from?" "Oh, I'm from the hill at Newcastle." No, that's how we met. That's the truth. And I said, I'm from Cardiff. And like, that's just how we met. It's like in a line in 14,000 kilometers from home, in a line to see Metallica. I mean, that's the beauty. That's the beauty of and the power of music and having a connection with a band, where you can these sort of relationships and all that are so organic, and you can meet that way. And then we've known each other now for 10 years, and I consider you a good friend of mine.
That's right, yeah. And mate, I'm dying to get back and have a beer with you and go to the beach and do all these things.
You're talking about Europe. Well, that's probably something I'm probably more leaning towards. So, I reckon, mate, I'll be definitely keen to do a couple of festival shows with you if you're keen. The back end. I'm looking at maybe the back end.
Well, I've got like 2 months off summer vacation, so I'm very keen to get over there and do some sightseeing along the way. And I think you've already been there before a couple of times, right? Yeah, with touring. Yeah,
I've been to Europe a handful of times. Europe's always a great place, particularly the non-English speaking countries. It's brilliant to actually experience that, because obviously they have no understanding of the wording, but they're so engaged. So it's really interesting to be part of, and they're so passionate too, the Europeans. And particularly the French are really engaged. And I think that festival is actually sold out, but there's Spain, Portugal, they're doing Italy. So I mean, Switzerland, they're doing Verta, which is a great festival. They're all excellent festivals to go to, all very well respected and well run festivals, which obviously the band are aligned with. So I mean, it's something to look forward to, and I think hopefully, fingers crossed, that we're sort of seeing the back end of COVID.
And the future for Metallica. Last question, mate. We're talking
future
about
of Metallica.
We're talking about a European tour. We're talking about a new album. We're talking about South America. So where are we going there? Where's the boys heading?
Well, I mean, if you listen to Lars, Lars is such an energetic, such a positive character, and he's always, the best is yet to come, and you always hear that. But again, just experience, and when you experience a show like that and a moment like that, and you see the level of intensity and the effort that they're willing to put in, you go, man, this band is still at such a high level.
Yeah.
Anything's possible. So there's that element, but then there's also the element, and it is for me anyway, the way I think is, I just hope they don't push things too far, which could end things prematurely. So it gets back to my point around, it's going to be a real balancing act, because I think in Lars's world, he could go on, I honestly think he will. He'll go on forever.
Yeah.
I just think I think how he lives his life and his mentality is that way. But I honestly think the issue is going to be around James and just how he can manage the touring and just the off-stage type things, as we're seeing with issues that he's had. But I think COVID's been a silver lining, so I think that's going to add some longevity. But it's just going to be interesting the next 1 or 2 years. But I mean, it just all looks really positive. And again, the 40-year shows was just another highlight and such a milestone for him to be positive and to move forward with.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Jace, I'll let you go. Great to chat to you as always. If I can't see you in Australia before Europe, let's make a plan. And
we will, buddy.
That'll be some amazing shows over there. I'm really looking forward to it if we can both get over there.
Stay safe, my friend.
You too. All right, mate.
See you, bud.
Bye.
See you, mate.